Hello there, this is Yanis from Arcweave with a new season of our basic tutorial series, including features never shown on YouTube before. In this episode, we have several quality of life improvements to discuss in Arcweave's design mode. First of all, let's see a couple of new ways that we can create jumpers. So far, the only way you could create a jumper was to find the element you wanted to jump to in the sidebar, for example this one, and then drag it into the board where you wanted to jump from. Thank goodness we now have two alternatives which are much easier to perform. The first is to use the search field and search for the element we are interested in jumping to. For example, let's search for how much. Now, if we drag this straight from the search results, we create a jumper pointing at it. And this is definitely an easier way than the first one. But sometimes you have the element right in front of you, and it would feel counterintuitive going back to the search field to look for it again so that you can create a jumper to it. In this case, you would certainly appreciate the third way of creating jumpers. Now, copy the element you want to jump to by right-clicking or by using the classic shortcut Control and C or Command and C on a Mac. Now, right-click on an empty area of a board. You can go to any board and just right-click and choose Paste as Jumper. And there it is. We have another jumper to the same how much element. Now note that Paste as Jumper has its own handy shortcut. So if we paste with Control and V or Command and V, and we paste the whole element, if we type Command Shift and V or Control Shift and V, we get a jumper. We get the Paste as Jumper option. Now, another quality of life feature that was recently added is the component references. Now, as we attach components to elements all over our boards, we may need at some point to see a report of all the places where a component is referenced. To do this, we go to our components list here. We right-click on a component and choose References. Then we see which components and which boards and elements have this component as attachment. If we click on any of those, we go to that component or element. Another new feature is the ability to create a new component upon mentioning it for the first time. So far, we have known that you can mention an existing component in your text by using the @ character. So if we go here and type @dragon, which exists, there's an existing component called dragon, and say dragon is here. Okay, we know that, but now the new feature is that we can do the same for an... so if we go here, Solon Blasphemous goes through his pockets and finds a dead frog, which is not an existing component, and we see here that the option is to create a new component called dead frog, or we can just type hit enter. And now we get a new component called dead frog right here. Notice, of course, the use of the underscore as a placeholder for the space character during this process. One other feature that can improve the clarity and beauty of your boards and diagrams is the new ability to make connections stick to specific sides of an element, a jumper, or a branch. For example, let's say we want to get this element closer to the next ones. Okay. And this is what happens. The arrowheads travel and they move from the side to the bottom and to the top of those two elements. And we don't want that. Maybe we want them to stick to the sides. So now we can just grab the connection from the arrowhead. And if we go close to the element, don't go within the body of the element, just go close to the edge, you will see this orange border line here, which is a thick border, and if you release it, now the output connection, the arrowhead stays stuck and faithful to this side here, no matter where you take the other element. And we can do the same with the arrow tail, with the beginning of the connection, and just drag it here and assign it to this side here, etc., etc. And now this is how this looks if you move the element around. If you want to revert to the automatic state, that is the default one, you just grab the arrow and you release it right inside the element, so that you can see the whole border, not just the side border. You see the whole border, the orange line around the element, and release it there. And now it's back to its auto state. On a similar note, when we create a new element, we will now notice that by default, the height of the element adjusts automatically to the amount of its text content. And this is the same with notes. So if we grab a note from here, and this is the amount of text content. Okay, so if we want this to have a specific height, if we want an element or a note to have a specific height, we now have to manually adjust this, and then it will keep it. So if we continue writing here, now we see that there's a scroll bar that appears on the side to access the hidden content. To switch back to the default automatic behavior, we double-click the elements or notes orange border. So just double-click here, and this reverts the height to the size fitting the content and the behavior back to auto. One last feature we'll see in this episode is the ability to embed a YouTube video as an element's cover. To do so, right-click on an element and choose Set Cover. And now you'll find a new tab here called Embed. And this is where you paste your YouTube video's link. We can now choose to have the video autoplay when the element loads, or to initially appear paused. And there's one more option about having the player controls available to the viewer. Let's leave those two choices as they are and click Embed Video. Now the video's YouTube thumbnail will show as the element's cover, and more importantly, when we get into play mode, we can watch the video itself play over the element's content and attached components. You can do this to include a video reference instead of embedding a link in the content, or even to create your own interactive movie, one that takes advantage of Arcweave's state handling with its variables and branches. As a matter of fact, what you've been watching here is our own goofy interactive movie, which we have included as a new example project. Just exit to your project list, click on the drop-down menu next to blank project, and you will find sample interactive walkthrough, which is basically the castle project, the original example project, and a sample interactive movie. So you can have hours of fun watching that. And that was all for this episode concerning some quality of life improvements. If you find these tutorials helpful, please consider subscribing to Arcweave's official YouTube channel. You can find us, the Arcweave team, hanging out on our Discord server, and of course you can follow Arcweave on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm Yanis from Arcweave. Thank you for watching, and let the games begin.